What's going on, ladies? Welcome to the Fat Loss Masterclass. This is part one. I'm going to be breaking down for you what causes you to gain weight over the age of 40. Some of these things apply to everyone. Some of these things are going to be specific to women and the hormonal changes that you are experiencing, right? So the first thing that we're going to cover is understanding what a calorie surplus is. The second thing we're going to cover is the reasons that women over 40 end up in one. Some knowingly, some unknowingly. And the third is going to be what's behind the belly fat accumulation, because that's something that bothers a lot of you the most, is seeing an increase in midsection fat, or as you're gaining weight, it feels like all of it is being concentrated in that one area. And there's definitely a reason and a science behind those things. So the first thing that we need to kick things off with is understanding what a calorie even is, so that we know what causes weight gain. At the end of the day, 1 pound of fat equals 3,500 calories. No matter how you chop it, no matter how you screw it, no matter if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whether you are perimenopausal, postmenopausal, have hypothyroidism, whatever the case may be. 1 pound of fat is 3,500 calories worth of stored energy. Simple and plain. If you are gaining weight, it is because you are in a calorie surplus, meaning you are consuming more calories than your body is burning, right? So if we look at this little diagram here, 1,800 calories, let's say that 1,800 calories is your maintenance calories, right? So if you are burning 1,800 calories per day and you consume 1,800 calories per day, you won't gain weight, you won't lose weight. That's what's considered your maintenance calories. That number looks different for everyone. Now, if you are burning 1,800 calories per day, but you consume 2,300 calories per day, you're consuming 500 calories above what your body is burning. So your body has to find something to do with that extra 500 calories that you're consuming on a daily basis. And it may not be 500 for everyone, right? For some people, it may just be 100 extra calories a day. For others, it may be 200. For some, it may be 300. Either way, you're consuming more than your body is burning. And over time, that is what leads to accumulating body fat. And using this example, if you consume 500 calories over your maintenance for 7 days, 500 times 7 equals 3,500 calories. So over the course of an entire week, you consumed 3,500 extra calories that your body didn't utilize. And if we go back to this first key at the beginning, 1 pound of fat is 3,500 calories. So if you eat 500 calories over your maintenance for an entire week, you're going to gain a pound of fat. That is just how it works. If you're in a smaller calorie surplus, it may take you a year to gain 5 pounds being in a slight surplus. For some people, maybe you gain 10 pounds in an entire year being in a slight surplus. Majority of this weight gain is something that happens over time. It's not happening overnight. But at the end of the day, again, it is because you're in a surplus. Now, some of the normal reasons that people end up in a calorie surplus is not having calorie awareness, so you're just not tracking calories, okay? And the second is having a low step count, getting anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 steps per day. I have an application that I have ladies fill out when they're considering joining our coaching program, and those are two of the questions that are on there. Are you tracking calories? How much steps are you getting on average per day? And both of those answers, 95% of the time, they're not tracking food. 95% of the time, they're getting anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 steps per day. So there's no awareness around how much calories are coming in, and they're not burning enough calories because they're not getting enough movement in, living a sedentary lifestyle, okay? The next is trouble regulating appetite. So appetite is something that is a huge issue, a huge boundary when it comes to being able to sustain something in regards to losing weight. If you're hungry all the time, you're gonna be eating. And if you're eating, you're going to be over consuming calories. So not knowing what foods you can eat, what type of foods, how you can put together your meals to mitigate hunger is a big challenge for a lot of women when it comes to sustaining being in a calorie deficit to lose weight. The fourth is trouble regulating emotions. This is another big one for a lot of ladies in their 40s and 50s, because you're in the height of your career. Some of your kids are still dependent on you. You're in that sandwich generation where your parents are turning into a version of having kids because they need help from you as well. and you're experiencing all these changes in your body where you're starting to become a bit more sensitive to stress, that these things can become overwhelming. And the inability to regulate your emotions in some of these situations can lead to emotional eating, right? It kind of just is what it is. And when you're choosing foods from an emotional state, it's usually going to be foods that are higher in calories. Things like snacks and sweets and fried foods, things along those lines, right? Those are some of the normal reasons. Now, in regards to the hormonal reasons, there are four main ones. The first is estrogen, right? So declines in estrogen as it starts to fluctuate once you enter your midlife transition is something that is going to lead to muscle loss, because estrogen is something that impacts muscle protein synthesis. So if you are struggling to maintain or build muscle due to this hormonal change, what ends up happening is your metabolism is going to get slowed down. So you're going to be burning less calories naturally, right? The next is cortisol. So as cortisol starts to increase, your stress sensitivity is also going to go up. Estrogen acts as a buffer for cortisol. So if estrogen is also declining and your cortisol levels are getting spiked more frequently, your baseline levels are going to be a lot higher, right? And I don't want to get ahead of myself because I'll dive into breaking down how all of these things are interconnected, but I want you to at least know the hormones that are influencing this. Progesterone is another one that impacts sleep. It has a calming effect on the body, right? So if you're not sleeping as much, sleep is something that impacts your hunger and appetite hormones, leptin and ghrelin, right? So if you're not sleeping as much, you're going to have increased appetite. These are things that lead to consuming a bit more calories. You may have lower energy levels. You won't move as much on a daily basis simply because you're not sleeping, okay? And then insulin sensitivity is another one that starts to decline as well, where your body's having more trouble processing sugar. This can lead to more cravings. This can lead to becoming pre-diabetic, right? These are all things that can create a calorie surplus for a lot of women over 40 without them realizing what has shifted. Okay, so I'm gonna scroll down and dive into the hidden surplus and break down for you the triangle of hormonal health, right? This is one of the easiest ways for me to break it down where you can see how everything is interconnected. In the triangle of hormonal health, the things that are at play are your female sex hormones, your stress hormones, and your blood sugar hormones. So estrogen and progesterone primarily, testosterone a little bit too, but estrogen and progesterone are the main ones. Estrogen specifically, right? Stress hormones, cortisol, and then blood sugar hormones in insulin. Three of them work in tandem. They're all interconnected. So some examples of this, like I mentioned before, when estrogen is starting to decline, it acts as a natural buffer for cortisol. So the way you can think about this is like if you have a friend who's a hothead, right? And whenever you guys go somewhere, it's very easy for them to get into a fight or into a disagreement with somebody. And you are the friend who calms them down and tells them, hey, like, we don't need to take it there. Just relax a little bit. And you can talk them off a ledge. But if you weren't there, that hothead would take it a little bit further and a little bit further, and then they would say something else, and then they would get riled up again, boom, there's a fight. That's literally what's happening with the relationship between cortisol and estrogen during the menopause transition. Because estrogen is declining, there's nothing that's getting in the way of cortisol being spiked more frequently. And this is what I mean when I say that your body is becoming more sensitive to stress, okay? Now, the next thing is progesterone having a calming effect on your body and being something that relaxes you. If you are losing the hormone that helps to keep your body a bit calmer, helps you to fall asleep at night as well, you're gonna experience more anxiety. If you're having trouble sleeping, you're gonna be burning less calories the following day because of lack of energy, right? So that is how all these things are interconnected, okay? So less sleep leads to imbalanced hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin, like we mentioned earlier. Less sleep leads to less energy on a day-to-day basis. Hunger hormones being out of whack is what's going to lead to more calories being consumed. And then less energy on a day-to-day basis is what's going to lead to less calories being burned. So if we scroll back up to this diagram of the 1,800 calories versus the 2,300 calories, right? And I'll just point to it so you at least know what I'm talking about. You end up consuming more and burning less. What could end up happening is your maintenance may even drop down, because of these hormonal shifts, where you're ending up maybe burning, let's say 1,600 calories instead. Let's just say, I'm just giving you an example, not saying that that's what it actually is. And then you may end up eating a little bit more than what you were eating before, right? For those of you who are experiencing changes, feeling like you haven't changed anything with nutrition, maybe you are still eating 1,800 calories, right? But you're burning less calories. So now you're burning 1,600 calories. Although you haven't changed anything with nutrition, you're still in a calorie surplus simply because of these changes that we just went over. Okay, now in regards to your blood sugar hormones and how estrogen and progesterone impact those, the main ones we're going to be focused on is estrogen. Estrogen leads to muscle loss because it impacts muscle protein synthesis. Estrogen also helps your cells to absorb glucose, right? So if your cells are having more trouble absorbing glucose and you are losing muscle mass, less muscle will lead to a slower metabolism. Less muscle also leads to more insulin. Reason being is because muscle acts as a storage unit for glucose. So the more muscle mass that you have on you, the more room and space you have to store sugar inside of the muscle, meaning you'll have less of it roaming around in your bloodstream, meaning your body will be less reliant on insulin to clear the sugar out of your blood, which means that your insulin sensitivity is going to improve. But if you're losing muscle due to declines in estrogen and you're also not doing the things that are necessary to maintain muscle mass, like prioritizing protein, doing strength training consistently, right? We'll get into that in part 2. If you're not doing those things, your insulin sensitivity is going to be decreased, right? You're gonna be burning less calories, having more trouble processing sugar. Your cravings are going to go up as well. And you will not have stable energy throughout the day either. If you're not having stable energy throughout the day, you're going to find it challenging to feel motivated enough to do physical activity. That is how all of these things are interconnected. So the bottom line becomes more cravings, more calories consumed. More fatigued, less calories burned. Okay, that is how all of these things come together. Another piece that I didn't mention in regards to cortisol and blood sugar and how the two of them are tied together. This is a piece that I forgot to put in there. When your cortisol levels remain too high throughout the day, it will be very challenging for you to fall asleep at night because high cortisol at night inhibits the production of melatonin, right? So again, this is something that's impacting your sleep. And something that causes your body to release cortisol is your blood sugar levels dipping too low. So if your blood sugar levels dip too low consistently throughout the day, and some things that you guys do that lead to this unknowingly is skipping breakfast, right? So skipping meals, not having enough protein when you eat, not getting in enough fiber when you eat as well. These are all things that cause your blood sugar levels to dip too low. Your body will release cortisol as a result of that. So at the end of the day, your cortisol levels are way higher than they need to be because you've been fasting or you just haven't been fueling yourself appropriately, right? So these are the dots that you have to connect to understand where you're going wrong and what you can actually shift that's within your control to create the right environment hormonally inside of your body to make it realistic for you to be able to sustain being in a calorie deficit. Okay, these are the things that you have to get clued in on. Now, the final piece is understanding the belly fat mystery, because there are a lot of you who are very frustrated that majority of the weight that you are gaining is accumulating in your midsection. And there's some science behind that. There's two main reasons. The first one is targeted fat storage, and this is due to estrogen. Estrogen dictates where your body stores fat. So during your childbearing years, your body prioritizes storing fat in your hips, right? And the reason behind this is because it gives your child, if you are pregnant, quick access to energy. It's something that protects the child as well. If you're getting closer to your childbearing years coming to an end and estrogen is starting to decline, your body no longer needs to prioritize storing fat there. It's going to reprioritize storing it in your midsection. So if you are having declines in estrogen and your body's reprioritizing storing fat in your midsection and you're also ending up in a calorie surplus, that's the reason why all of the weight that you're gaining feels like it's concentrated in that one area. Okay? Big part of that comes down to targeted fat storage due to estrogen. Now, the next piece is visceral fat. This comes down to cortisol and insulin. Both of them promote visceral fat storage if they are out of whack. And the reasons behind this is it's a safety mechanism for your body. So if your body is perceiving more stress than is actually there, and cortisol is your stress hormone, it's literally, the role of cortisol is to mobilize energy, to mobilize sugar into your blood, to give your body access to it to get you out of stressful situations. And insulin's role is to shuttle that sugar that was just mobilized into your blood into your cells. But if your body's perceiving that there's more stress and you're producing more cortisol, your body's releasing more insulin, eventually you'll become insulin resistant. Eventually you'll have more sugar that in your bloodstream that your body doesn't know what to do with. Insulin is going to start to shuttle that to your midsection, because that's where majority of your cortisol receptors are. Okay? Cortisol also prioritizes storing fat in that area because it's closer to your organs. So if you have more fat being stored around your organs, if you are truly in a dire situation, or you're truly in a situation where your safety is at risk, or you're dying, your organs can access energy very quickly. It's literally a safety mechanism. Okay, so sometimes the increase in midsection fat is visceral fat. The way that you can tell the difference, if you can grab it and hold on to it and it's squishy, that's subcutaneous fat, right? That's fat that is, it's beneath the skin. If it's deeper and it's harder, then it is visceral fat. Okay, that's typically when you see your stomach feels like hard and it's very protruded. Some of that comes down to visceral fat. And the way that you can tell is by measuring the circumference of your midsection. And if it's above a certain amount of inches, I need to fact check that. I believe it's like 30 something, 35 inches or something along those lines. Then chances are you have quite a bit of visceral fat. Okay, and the danger with visceral fat is that it's metabolically active. It's very inflammatory as well. It releases chemicals called cytokines, right? And those are the things that lead to having more inflammation in the body. It can leave you at risk for diabetes, for stroke, for hypertension, for heart disease. And heart disease is pretty much like the leading cause of death for women, right? And it's crazy that a lot of people aren't connecting the dots with how so much of this is related to the menopause and going through the menopause transition, but this is what it all comes down to. And changing this is 100% within your control. You just need to know what to shift, because there are things that you all are doing that it becomes counterproductive, right? For example, if your body's becoming more sensitive to stress, and training is a form of stress on the body, and you're still doing HIIT workouts, you're still doing intense levels of cardio, well, you're having your body produce more cortisol than it needs to, and during a time where it's becoming more sensitive to stress, right? Like I mentioned, doing fasting and all these outdated methods, it's not your fault. It's literally just what the fitness industry has been pushing to you. It's not your fault. You just need to understand what is changing and how to honor what's being changed, so you can stay away from doing some of these things, right? So in the next video, I'm gonna break down things that are within your control and that you can do in order to start making progress and seeing some results. And it will start with creating the right environment in your body hormonally to make sustaining a calorie deficit as realistic as possible.